Greetings, welcome, sharps, squares, newbies. It's another edition of the Parleh Sports Betting Show. Alongside Harley Redlick, the sharp professional, I'm Jorey Middlestadt, and we're coming to you as we do each and every week on Canada's sports betting network, the Parleh. Good Friday morning, Harley.
How you doing? It's April Fool's Day, Jorey. It's my son's favorite, one of his top three, along with Halloween and his birthday, favorite days of the year.
Yeah, well, I think I got a not so fun April Fool's joke played on me this morning from a business standpoint outside of this stuff, but I'm not so sure, and I hope I'm wrong, but it doesn't appear that way. It actually looks like it's not an April Fool's. Nonetheless, we're here. It's a very busy sports weekend and certainly time frame in the sports world, not to mention what's about to happen where we're located in Ontario, as single game wagering will be fully operational on Monday, April 4th. And the Parleh is actually hosting an event in downtown Toronto on Bremner Boulevard at the Rec Room. All are welcome. We're going to do a little thing. There's going to be some other panel chats. We'll certainly talk about the men's championship game that will occur that night in college basketball. So it's a really busy time in all over the sporting calendar, and we're excited to talk about it. Very quickly, what's going to happen on this week's show? We're going to talk about both the men's and the ladies' Final Four after we recap our picks from a week ago. Harley wants to talk about how to track your betting results, which is certainly time appropriate given the fact that, all the books, aside from the provincial lottery, are going to be able, at least, to be operating starting on Monday and offering single game wagering. So good time to talk about that. And we'll talk about some other things, some things we've talked about before, but we should reiterate given what is going to happen on Monday. The Masters is next week. At this time next week, when we join you, we will be through one round. So we wanted to give you a preview, and hopefully, I guess it'll be mostly me because you're not a golf guy. My favorite, or certainly in the top three sporting weekends of the year is next weekend for the Masters. Meanwhile, next week, Major League Baseball is underway. So we're going to look at Major League Baseball futures and win totals. I know you're not a big fan of win totals. You'll tell us why. We'll talk about that. You have some thoughts on tonight's red hot Raptors as they are in Orlando to take on the Magic. And as I said earlier, we'll talk a little more about what's going to happen on Monday when multiple books will launch in Ontario being the first province to do so in this country since single game wagering was legalized. I guess it was last August, right? When the legislation was finally passed.
Mm-hmm.
We should also remind you, we love to hear from you. Questions@theparleh.com is how you get in touch with us via email. On social media, I'm at Jorey Middle. Harley is at Sharp Edge Picks. And whenever you're on social media, use the hashtag Parleh, PARLEH SBS. Well, Harley, let's start as we do each and every week, sort of the pattern we've got into, by talking about what happened a week ago with our picks, because we're here to try and give you winners each and every week. And you were off to a 7-1 start in terms of winning weeks. And you've cooled off, my friend. You've cooled off a little bit. That's the way it goes in the betting world, peeps. If you didn't know that, well, get educated. So 2 straight losing weeks. You didn't have a big slate last week. Both were March Madness picks, one on the men's side, one on the ladies' side. You had Iowa State in the Sweet 16. They fell to the Miami Hurricanes, who ultimately fell to Kansas. And on the women's side, you had the winner, but it was a point spread play. NC State was an 8.5-point favorite over Notre Dame in a really thrilling finish to that game. And the Wolfpack only won by 1, so they failed to get the cover. So I'm guessing you're going to pull up your socks and be a lot better this week.
It's the ups and downs of sports betting. That's why tracking results is so important. We're going to address that later, as you mentioned. But for now, let's emphasize how hot you are, Jorey. Tennis and golf. You're the specialist in 2 categories. So let's start with tennis. Kyrgios over Rublev last week, plus 137. That was a win. You gave us Alexandrov over Azarenka plus 250. Even though that lost, it was a third set tiebreaker.
Yeah.
Anytime you're in the tiebreaker in the third set plus 250, pat yourself on the back. That's how I always view my hockey bets when they go into overtime or shootouts and I got a big dog. Your long shot pick, which you did say you weren't playing but was worth a look, was Korik over Zverev at plus 450, and that also went to 3 sets. So that's pretty live, Jorey, on the tennis side.
Borna Coric, yeah, he'll be a factor again this year. He was coming off a long injury layoff, but yes, thank you for the kind words.
And you were good in golf also. We could continue. Connors was a winner. Gooch started minus 105, went all the way to minus 25 while we were on the air, so it shows you you were on the sharp side. That was a winner. And you lost with Fitzpatrick over Scheffler. I think you wanted to comment on your loser. Maybe you want to justify your loss.
Well, I don't know if you remember what I had to say about that, but my thought process there was that Scheffler's been on fire. He's the hottest player in the world. He is now the number 1 golfer on the men's side in the world. He's won 3 of his last 5 events because he ended up winning the tournament last week, the World Match Play, which is a huge event. And so my thinking was he'd played a ton of golf and he was probably going to run out of steam. And it kind of looked that way because he wasn't that sharp in his first 2 matches. Fitzpatrick was playing really well. So in the meantime, he blew out Fitzpatrick in that match. And then because they were in the same group and were tied, they had to go to a playoff. And so this is how fickle things can be, right? So in order to advance to the last 16, this was the World Match Play event last week. He had to go 6 sudden death playoff holes just to get in to take out Fitzpatrick because they were tied at the top of their group and move on to the final 16, right? Goes 6 playoff holes and ends up running the table and winning the event. As I said, 3rd win in 5 starts, which is crazy. That's a lot in golf. That's like Tiger-like numbers. And now he's elevated himself to the number 1 player in the world, where just months ago, like 3 months ago, people were wondering when he was going to get his first win because he was putting up great results but hadn't won. And now he's won 3 of 5. He took this week off. He was supposed to play this week, which was a smart move to rest up because he will be a factor next week at Augusta at the Masters. And as we said earlier, or as I said earlier, we'll be talking about the Masters later. So yeah, thanks. I was pretty happy going 2-1 in golf. And even though going 1-1 in tennis, because I had both money line dogs come out a winner there. So whenever you're having a winning week, nothing to complain about. And I certainly won't do that.
Okay. I mean, when you talk about the fine line, it's true in both sports and gambling. Jackie, one of the best poker players, Chan, won a World Series of Poker. He won 7 flips in a row. Remember that year the Montreal Canadiens won the Cup? They won like 8 or 10 games in overtime. I mean,
yeah, I think it was 10. It's
a fine line. We write the narrative after the fact, and we go from there. I mean, there's a bounce in, a bounce out in early rounds of an NCAA tournament game, and then you run the table. People anoint you as the champion. And I mean, North Carolina almost blew a 20-point lead to Baylor. That game went into overtime.
25. Yeah, 25. They did blow it, but then recovered and won in overtime. Yeah.
Correct.
So yeah, a bounce here, so many things can impact the outcome. Just last week in the other big tennis tournament at Indian Wells, Taylor Fritz went on to win that tournament. He won 2 matches in 3rd set tiebreakers. And I believe it was in 2 matches, he saved at least 1 match point, right? So, I mean, he could have been out in like the 2nd or 3rd round and then goes on a run and wins the tournament. So things are fickle. It's a fine line at the highest level of sports. There's no question about it. Obviously a big weekend for college basketball fans, as it's both the men's and ladies Final Four. before we get to, I know you have a pick on one of tomorrow's men's Final Four games. I just wanted to comment about the tournament, right? So we talked, like, my bracket stunk. It sucked. It blew up early. And there were pretty good percentage of upsets in the first couple rounds, even to the Sweet 16, as we saw, right, with St. Peter's being a 15 seed going to the Elite Eight, which had never happened before. But at the end of the day, what did we end up with? A 1, 2 2s, and an 8. And the 8 is North freaking Carolina, right? They had a bit of a down year, but played really well down the stretch. So to call them really an 8, that's marginal. But the other thing I wanted to say about the men's tournament, with apologies, I didn't watch a ton of the ladies, and I didn't watch a ton of the men's. Like, I watched in and out of games, and obviously there's a lot. Sometimes there's multiple games going on at the same time in the earlier rounds. But one of the things that stood out to me in the majority of the games I watched is that basketball was pretty shitty. Would you agree with that?
They're kids. They're not.
No, I know.
They're not the kids. They're not the kids we remember, in the sense that there were years when we were watching where Indiana and Kansas were bringing back these stars for 3-4 years.
Yes.
So
totally,
you're either watching teams of okay kids that in a year or two from now will be teachers or mechanics or whatever they become in life, and kids who, or you got 18-year-olds in Kentucky who are going to go to the NBA next year, but they don't play as a team. So in terms of overall quality of basketball, it's deteriorating. I wonder what will happen. The G League is obviously going to take more of the kids, but now that they have these nil contracts and you can pay kids to stay in school, maybe kids will start staying 3-4 years at these top programs. The boosters will pay them, and the quality of hoops will, I mean, the NCAA is going to become a professional basketball league and try to compete with at least the G League, if not the NBA.
Trust me, I understand what I'm watching. And I again, we talked about this going into the tournament. I haven't watched a ton of college basketball this year in the last couple of years. Things have certainly changed back, from my heyday. Well, I shouldn't say that, but call it that, of watching a ton of college basketball. And one of the things that the one and done has created is it's hard to get attached to teams because the guys are certainly the bigger programs. They're 1 year and gone, right? I mean, you go back like Ralph Sampson, and I'm going way back now, early 80s, member in Virginia, right? Back-to-back player of the year. Like, he could have gone to the NBA after his junior year, but no, he wanted to win a championship, went back for his senior year. Like, that stuff just rarely happens anymore.
I think Duncan was the last guy, if memory serves,
at Wake Forest,
actually pulled that move. And I mean, think about it. Duncan then went on to have a 20-year career, and he's retired. That's how old we are. So, I mean.
But yeah, it just reminded me, in a lot of the games, like, I mean, you're seeing halftime scores of, 27-21 and stuff. Like, anyway, I wanted to get that out there. I know what I'm watching, but I was just reminded that quite often the quality of basketball was not great. Having said that, given the quality of programs and what I saw in the Elite Eight, we should have some really good games at the men's Final Four. And so the early game is the one that's getting no attention. And we're talking about Villanova and Kansas. Kansas is as blue blood a program as there is. Villanova's got a great history. And in recent times, they're a blue blood program. They've won 2 national championships in the last 5 or 6 years, right? With Jay Wright at the helm, their head coach. Bill Self has won a national championship, the head coach of Kansas, yet like nobody's talking about it because of the second game, which we'll get to. But I think this is the one where you have a lot more thoughts on.
I like Villanova plus 4.5. I think Kansas is a great team. Agbaji and Braun are top 50 NBA picks. Kansas won the Big 12 regular season and conference championship, and they just crushed Miami in the second half of the game. But Villanova, to me, is strong also. They look great all tournament. They won the 9 in a row. Coach Wright is a real superstar, like you mentioned. He's looking for his 3rd championship in 6 years. I just think 4.5 is a lot of points for this gritty Nova team, and I'm taking it for value. That's my pick of the week.
Yeah, so the spread is 4.5, and it's pretty much stayed that way. I looked earlier in the week. There hasn't been much movement. Any thoughts on the total, which is 133?
The only bet I'm making this week is on Nova plus 4.5. I mean, like you said, some of these games are 60-50. Some of them are higher. Some of them are lower. I have no thoughts on the total in that game.
Okay. And now the big one, which is the one thing that's amazing, and I'm pretty sure I have this right. We're talking about the North Carolina Tar Heels and the Duke Blue Devils. Arguably the biggest rivalry in college basketball. Some might say the biggest rivalry in college sports, period. Right? Because they play in the same conference. They play twice a year. They are two of the most storied programs in college basketball. I mean, Duke doesn't have the length of history that North Carolina does, but in the Mike Krzyzewski era, they're it, right? They are the standard at the very top. And what I was saying is, I'm pretty sure I have it right. This is the first time they've ever played in the tournament.
People find that to be amazing because they just don't understand that the way the committee does the selection, they specifically don't want conference matchups. So they put them in opposite sides of the bracket.
In the regions, yes.
In the regions, especially if they're good. So basically, I mean, you're right in the sense that it's amazing they never got to an Elite Eight or a Final Four before in the same year. Maybe it's a function of one of them has to be ranked like a 1 or 2 seed. I wonder how often they've both been ranked that high. Usually if you're ranked a 4 or 5 seed even, you don't go that far. It's a great matchup. You look back to that last game they played, that game that set records for ticket prices, the last regular season game in Cameron Indoor for Krzyzewski. Duke was an 11-point favorite in that game.
Yeah.
Now they're a 4-point favorite. This is a neutral court, so that would make that game closer to 7 or 8 if it was in Duke. So basically, line makers are giving North Carolina 3 points, relatively better to Duke since that game to kind of net it out, which I think is correct. Duke did a little bit better than them in the.
Sorry, I just want to remind you. You were talking about that North Carolina blew them out in that game.
North Carolina blew them out in that game. That's maybe a point of the 3 points at most. Right. That's all the odds makers would adjust for that. Duke outperformed them a little bit better in the ACC, but there's no question about the fact that North Carolina has been playing better competition and has looked better in the tournament. Duke struggled against both Michigan State and Texas Tech. Both games were tied with 2 minutes to go. North Carolina had looked good. They've played, St. Peter's was still a 15 seed that they crushed. Who cares that they won a couple games before that? They were still a monster favorite over that. But their body of work before that, we talked about them blowing the 25-point lead, but they still beat a 1 seed in Baylor. They beat up on Marquette. They look good versus UCLA. North Carolina has had a great tournament, so I think this line is about right. This game is a pass for me.
The line here, by the way, is also 4.5, but that's moved. I looked last night and it was 4, and this morning Duke is now a 4.5-point favorite, and the total's way higher than the other game, 151. Now, obviously, that's both Duke and North Carolina have been a little better offensively than Duke and Nova, if you go back and look at the scores of their games. But that's a pretty high total, wouldn't you say?
It's a pace of play thing more than anything else.
Yeah.
Coach Jay Wright plays a more methodical game. Coach Jay Wright is the basketball equivalent of football teams in the 1980s or 70s that ran the ball into the line of scrimmage and the clock ticks off and they're slow and it just slows down the game and it slows down the total. As a general rule, especially in these Final Fours, they're playing where? In New Orleans. They play in the football stadium.
Yeah, and the big dome. Sightlines.
For the first 5-7 minutes of the game, it sometimes looks ugly. It's crazy that they play in these football stadiums. I know they want to sell the tickets. They're not conducive venues. The tickets, if you look at them, for the most part, suck. It's like when watching WrestleMania from like the Dome in the 500s. You're at the place to say you're at the place, but you'd way rather be watching it on 4 HDs or 5Ks or whatever the fanciest technology is on TV now.
So along those lines, just thinking out loud here, And you bring up a good point, because usually when they play, excuse me, in these big, large football stadiums, the sight lines are so much different than they are in a basketball arena. And we've seen it time and time again that, first of all, you've got the nerves and the jitters of being in the Final Four, even if you've been there before, right? A lot of these kids are not going to be professionals. Like, this is the pinnacle, right, of their basketball careers for a lot of these kids, even on these big programs.
Not on Duke. Pretty much all four dudes on Duke are going to the NBA in the first round. The guys at Duke played in Cameron last month for tickets that went for probably higher than these Final Four go. You're right in general for these blue-blooded programs. These kids have been playing in that and they're used to it. But I hear what you're saying.
Right, but even still, right? Both teams generally are going to go 7-8 deep, and still maybe only 3 or 4, and in some cases less will go to the NBA. So you got the jitters. You have, and people are going, what? They're shooting at a basket. What's the difference? It does matter. I'm no elite level basketball player, trust me, but I've played basketball for a long time. And what you see behind the basket, your sight lines and your depth perception actually matters. And so where I was going with this is, do you ever consider in games like this, and we've seen it before, under totals in the first half?
Yeah, it's a good play. I think, again,
I'm not saying I'm playing it, but it just in the course of our conversation, it dawned on me, because I was saying in a lot of the games where I was saying there was so much bad offense, like a lot of the games, I'm like, why am I not playing unders in these first halves in a lot of these games?
In the first half, I like to play. If there's adjustments, again, I'd have to look at the totals more.
Of course.
It only comes up in a couple of games a year. So the problem with some of these theories is, let's say you're right, and let's say it's coming in 55, even the coveted crazy 60% of the time. It's only 2 games a year, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It over like a 20-year career, you're going to grind out a single bet of value by doing it. I think it's got merit. I think if you're looking for something to bet just for the sake of betting it, you're better off with that than almost anything else.
Okay. Yeah, no, and I haven't researched it, but it just sort of, came to mind when you were talking about, and you brought up playing in these stadiums. And I'm like, yeah, I remember seeing a lot of slow starting Final Four games and championship games too, for that matter. But at least they have a game under their belts in that facility, right? When they get to the Monday night championship game, at least on the men's side. Now we don't
100%.
Let's move along.
On the women's side, it's funny because we keep talking about the blue-blooded programs on the men's side, but some of them were not seeded right, or North Carolina was an 8, etc. There were different seedings coming in. When we previewed and talked about the women's Final Four, we said that there were 3 elite teams: South Carolina, UConn, and Stanford. And there they are, along with Louisville in the Final Four. Louisville was a 1 seed, but they're weaker. South Carolina is the best team of the pack. They're an 8-point favorite. The Stanford-UConn game is almost like a pick'em, should be a phenomenal game. Those games are tonight.
Yes,
If South Carolina wins, they should be a small favorite in Sunday's final against either opponent. And if Louisville somehow upsets them, bonus for UConn or Stanford. Whoever wins will likely win the championship. Again, that Stanford UConn game is phenomenal, and whoever South Carolina plays in the finals should be a phenomenal game also. I don't have any bets there. They're just the best teams playing off. No different than Duke, North Carolina. To me, they're a pass.
3 1s, and UConn was a 2 this year, which is highly unusual, but they had a bunch, they had some key injuries this year that kind of, held them back a little bit, but now they're healthy, and, they took out the number 1 seed, right? NC State. South Carolina has become a powerhouse program. Stanford has been for a while now near the top on the women's game.
I would say Stanford's been the number 2 or 3 for a while, along with them. I mean, Tennessee used to be up there, but yeah.
Yeah. So just going over it quickly, the first game, these games are tonight. Louisville is an 8.5-point underdog against South Carolina. The total's 119.5. And UConn, who's won like a million national championships, they are a slight underdog. Stanford is a 1.5-point favorite, and the total there is 128.5, but you're taking a pass, right?
My only bet this week is Villanova plus the 4.5. And then when we get to Major League Baseball futures, and I got a Raptors bet I like also.
All right, just writing down that's your only play when it comes to the men's and the women's Final Four. Women's tonight, men's tomorrow evening. So we usually try to do some kind of betting concept. It can be a term or a quote unquote concept. And with the books, many books going to be operational starting Monday in Ontario, you wanted to talk about how to track your betting results. So explain.
This is really, really important. If you're going to take this seriously, you need to accurately track your results. I mean, if you're a casual bettor who's betting for fun, then I really, really encourage you to just bet small, bet enjoyable, view it as entertainment money. If you want to give $200 for the football season, cool. Don't bet 150 of it in week one, or you're going to just run out of money. I mean, it's important.
Oh, no, we're going to talk more about that later when we talk.
A lot of guys will make the mistake of betting $30 on 5 different games, thinking they'll for sure win at least 2 out of 5. And then when the week they go over and they run out of money, or worse, they lose half their money, and then they go double or nothing on a game and they blow it and their bankroll's done, and then they borrow and credit cards, and it just gets ugly.
Yes. No, we're going to talk more about that.
That's an important, responsible gambling
important thing. Yes, super important. Can't stress it enough.
If you're going to take this seriously, you need to accurately track your results. Your cash into the sites, factor in the Visa charges, the fees, how much is in your accounts every time you withdraw. Never make an excuse. You got to track it all. Don't say, that bet doesn't count because that was a fun bet because I had to have something going on the Final Four. Or my friend gave me that tip, so it doesn't count. Or even worse, sometimes you may bet for a friend who gives you the money and then you pay him out, but your account is inflated. You got to accurately track your results. Don't start playing accounting games or you're in trouble. I would encourage everybody to track each bet across sports so you can maybe discover you're good at the NBA and you suck at hockey, in which case basketball becomes your winter sport. This is really hard to do because the N has to be huge. You need to make hundreds and hundreds of bets till you can figure out whether or not you're actually good at this stuff. And in the interim, you might just fall for some false noise, like going 9-4 in the NBA and 4-9 in the NFL doesn't make you a really good basketball bettor and a really bad football bettor, but it might start giving you an indication. I would encourage people to comment with their bets and be fair. So, for example, my Iowa State bet last week sucked. They lost by 20 points to the Hurricanes in a virtual pick'em. First week of the tournament, I gave everybody Colorado State on the money line against Michigan. They were winning pretty good with 6 minutes to go. That's a bet that didn't go my way that I was happy about. The Iowa State bet didn't go my way, and that was a bad bet by me. If you can honestly track your results and put them into different silos, bets you clearly won, bets you could have been gone either way, and be honest, when you win them and when you lose them, honestly evaluate them, you'll get a better feel or you want to get a better feel of the luck versus skill, and I think that's really important.
That's a good point. That's a good point because and you kind of made that point for me, and then I trashed myself with last week's bets on tennis and golf. Right, I had Alexandrova plus 250, right, which is a big underdog, right? And she went all the way to a third set tiebreak, and I think had match point, right? I felt good about that, about that one, right? And then on the other side, when I said, I was going against Scheffler because I figured at some point he's going to run out of gas having played so much golf, like it just happens that way, and I was dead wrong, and he got blown out. So
100%. And that's why
those are the examples you're talking about, right?
Correct. If you can evaluate both sets of bets and your winners, everybody can find reasons why they got screwed when their losers don't come in because of bad luck. But you got to acknowledge the good luck when you win a bet where, I don't know, a guy was down a break in the second set after losing the first set, and somehow the other guy got upset at a fan or twisted an ankle or kind of got sore, and then you won, and you're like, no, you got lucky and your bet sucked. Nobody even most people, if you're not watching the game, they don't even check the box score or what happened when their winners win.
Yeah.
They go check their account. They won. Their losses. They look up and cry about the injustice. That's not what I'm suggesting. If you honestly evaluate it all, you're in good shape.
So how do you do this? Like, do you create? I'm talking old school because you could do it on a spreadsheet. Most people might do it on their computer, but old guys like us might take a pen and a ledger, like create a ledger of some kind. How would you recommend people do this? And
Okay,
what are the categories? And what are the categories? Like, how do you set it up to properly track what you're talking about? Like, a good bet that you lost, a bet you won, but to be honest, you got super lucky. Like, how do you do this?
Okay, so let's be clear, Jorey. Using an Excel spreadsheet is old school. You're like from ancient times. So from 2-3 generations ago, old men maybe did pen and paper and a ledger.
Right. Yeah.
I have everything on an Excel spreadsheet with, like you suggested, bets, columns, amount bet, results, comments. And then because of that, I can and sport. And because of that, I can sort the data whenever I want. So I can figure out, I could sort by sport. I can sort by result. I try to start my comments with like an alphabetical list, bad luck, good luck, etc., to see if I'm evaluating too many things as good luck and bad luck. My Excel is old school because the new school way is there's apps for tracking a lot of the results.
Right.
And you use those, you figure it out, and you track them, like you said, across columns. One cautionary tale I would give everybody, especially as April 4th approaches, if you're really good or you're going to accumulate a lot of bonuses, be very careful in the first few months because there is a very good chance you're up money simply because you've accumulated and cashed out bonuses. For the most part, those bonuses are not sustainable. There are people who get rich not by making a lot of money, but by not spending a lot of money, or are great value shoppers and can get great deals at restaurants and travel, and they live a very nice life on a very cheap dime. If that's your skill set, amazing. And if you're going to spend the next year or 5 years of your life, I'd like to think there are some people who maybe live in other provinces or who maybe live in some of the US states right now who are descending onto Ontario, and they rented an apartment for April 1st. They're going to spend the month of April accumulating bonuses with their residency and their cards or whatever they need in Ontario to prove they belong. And they're going to cash out on bonuses. And then they're going to figure out in May, if Kansas is talking about going live, they move to Kansas in May and Alberta in June, and they zigzag across the country. No different than poker players have been doing for 50 years, where they hear about hot markets and they get in their car and they move and they're vagabonds. And if that's your strategy, kudos and all the power to you. You can grind it out with bonuses. If that's not your strategy and that's not who you are, then you better track your results, because if you're not against the spread at least 53%, this is going to be a tough slog for you. And again, you can bet money lines. If you're 41, 42% getting 3-2, all's good, but you got to track what you're doing.
I want to come back to that later when we talk about Monday, April 4th, with the Ontario launch, about free bets and bonuses. I have a couple questions about that. But Major League Baseball is back, and there was certainly some question about that, as we know, as there was a lengthy lockout and things weren't looking good for a while, but they got a deal done. Shortened spring training. Opening day, I believe, is Thursday, the 7th. The Jays, I know, open, I think, on the Friday at home to Texas.
The Jays open at Rogers Center on Friday night.
That is correct. So all the odds are out. And we're talking about the futures right now. We're not talking about single game bets just yet. Well, I guess you can bet spring training if you want, but I'm not going down that road at the moment. So you've got the futures include to win the World Series, to win the pennant. I'm still calling it that, the pennant, and to win the division. We'll talk about win totals after. So to win the World Series, believe it or not, the Blue Jays are the second choice right now, Harley. They're at plus 800. Again, some of these lines will vary depending on which books you're looking at. And as you always say, line shop, right? Especially for futures.
I'm glad you mentioned that. They're 8-1 at Bet365. They are 10-1 at Circa, which tends to have pretty good lines. Always line shop. The Jays are expected to win 92.5 games. We have an exciting summer ahead of us. I mean, I'd probably short them in their division. Tampa's tough. The Yankees are good. Don't count out the Red Sox. At some point in time, the Orioles are going to turn it around. I mean, 92-70 sounds like a pretty good season to me, and they still don't make their win total. There's moving parts, not to mention I can't name their bullpen. I don't know who's in their bullpen. The only person I know who's in their bullpen is Julian Merriweather, and the only reason I know that is because my son's name is Julian. The bullpens are turnovers.
Really? Romano's back.
Romano's back. That's right. I don't remember who's back and who's not. Were they any good? Were they not good? Did they figure it out? The bullpens are wild cards every year in baseball.
Yes.
Our starting pitching looks good, but do you trust Ryu? If in Ryu's first start, he gets pulled in the third inning, are people going to be calling for his head? Because people are going to panic pretty quickly.
The one thing I will say about the Jays is they are the sexy pick, like south of the border too, right? They're the only major league team in Canada. We're here. We're very familiar with them and, know a lot more about them than other teams for sure, especially outside the division. Having said that, you know how this goes, right? When there's so much hype and they're the sexy pick, a lot of the time, teams fall flat and or injuries, right? There's so many things that can happen over the course of 162 games. I'll just point to last year, right? Wasn't the sexy pick last year the Padres, right, in the National League, and they were going to overtake the Dodgers, and for about at least half, maybe even 2/3 of the season, they were right there, and then they fell off a cliff, right, and didn't make the playoffs and weren't really even close in the last month. So
I'll go one step further. Going into last spring, Vladdy was coming off of a more lackluster season.
Yeah, it was
a little
just
chubby.
Okay. Yeah,
was a little unknown. I mean, in certain circles, Kevin Biggio looked like he had more upside than Vladdy, and now Vladdy is the superstar he's the favorite to win MVP in the American League. Yep. I mean, he had a great season last year.
Finished second in the MVP voting.
Right.
So getting back to the futures, I would say there's, like I said, I don't think there's value in the Jays at second choice at plus 800. The Dodgers are the overwhelming favorite at just plus 450, and justifiably so. They're loaded again. The Astros are the third choice at plus 900. Then the Yankees at plus 1100. Again, I'm using numbers from one book. Along with the Mets and Brewers, all three of those teams are plus 1100. And then you have the Chicago White Sox at plus 1200. And the defending World Series champs are only eighth choice at plus 1300. My thoughts on futures, we've talked about it in the NHL when we reviewed, in the NBA, is I'm looking for value. If I'm going to tie up my money for that long, I need some good value. In other words, a pretty good payoff. So where are the value plays? I will say for me, I think the odds aren't quite where I'd like them to be. And I would line shop this, but the Tampa Bay Rays, it doesn't seem to matter. Like I don't know if I can name 5 people on their roster right now. I probably could if I thought about it, because it's the pitchers that change, right? Each and every year, especially the bullpen. But they're there every year. It doesn't seem to matter what their payroll is, who's on the team. They're well managed. Kevin Cash does a good job. They always have fire throwing guys in the bullpen, one after the other. Plus 1,400, or if you can find better, isn't there value in the Rays? You're hesitating.
Well, for starters, here's the mistake you're making, and I think a lot of people make. They're 7-1 to win the American League, and then 14-1 to win the World Series. So unless you think the Rays are going to be 55% in the World Series, you're better off betting them to win the American League.
Yep.
So that's a cautionary
and I have them down
tale.
there too. I have them down there too when you look at the pennants, because
If you would have asked me what I thought about them at the pennant at 7-1, I would have given you a emphatic nod of approval as opposed to a no. So it's important for our listeners to remember, if you're going to pick dogs and they're just going to be double to win the World Series, you're better off betting them to win the pennant, because odds are they're going to be a dog to the World Series, especially the American League teams that are going to have to face the Dodgers. I don't care who you are. I don't care what kind of season the Jays have. If they face the Dodgers in the World Series, it's almost impossible to come up with a scenario where they're the favorite, unless they add guys at the deadline. The Dodgers lose guys and somehow pimple in. The Dodgers are probably going to be the favorite. So generally speaking, when you bet the dogs, if the books do a lazy job, and a lot of them do, where they kind of just double up the World Series from the pennant,
right,
and you're going to bet these big dogs, you're better off betting them to win their conference, or go to the World Series, or go to the championship.
All right. So where have you found value to either win the division, the pennant, or the World Series? I'm guessing you've uncovered some value somewhere.
Yeah, I got the Phillies at 13-1 to go to the World Series. There's no
to
Dodgers
win the National League.
To win the National League. There's no Dodgers in their division. As scary as DeGrom and Scherzer are, I don't think the Mets can score any runs. I know the Braves are also a trendy pick to go to the World Series after their win. I'm not buying it. Net losing Freddie Freeman on what was a good but not great team should hurt them. And the Marlins and Nationals suck. So I think the Phillies are in a good spot. They got two great starters in Zach Wheeler and Aaron Nola. They're the 5th and 6th favorites to win the Cy in the National League. They got a super stud in Harper. They got an all-star catcher, which is huge in Real Muto, because it's really hard. It's usually a dead position. They added Schwarber and Castellanos. They're a solid team in an okay division at 13-1 to go to the World Series. They're my primary play. And then I got a real long shot for you.
Okay.
The Reds at 65-1 to go to the World Series.
Wow.
That price is on Pinnacle. I actually got them at 85-1 in Circa in Vegas last month. That to me was a great price. This is purely a play on what I think is a putrid division.
Right.
Division play is essential in baseball. You're playing your division like half the time, and somebody's got to win it, and the NL Central is weak. St. Louis and Milwaukee are the favorites, and they're only expected to win like 85, 87 games. Cubs are mediocre. The Pirates are a complete joke. Last year, did you know Cincinnati won 83 games? Not bad.
They're not a bad team.
They can replicate that, and it's almost enough to win the division. At 65-1, you don't need much. You need a path. You need a viable way. Winning that putrid division, you get the host maybe in a round, and it's baseball. You can catch luck. You can strike it out. Listen, if Cincinnati at the trade deadline is competing for the division after a while, maybe they make a big roster move or two and mortgage the future, and you're the beneficiary.
Yeah. And it's funny because the other value play that I kind of liked is sort of piggybacked on one of yours. And I thought the Phillies at plus 400 to win the division, the NL East.
Same concept.
Right. Was worth some value, right? You know, the Braves are a good team. There's no question, but I think they may drop off a little bit. I think the Mets are way overhyped, right?
I mean, it's a tough
they have
spot.
I think they're way overhyped, and a lot of new additions. Like we haven't seen this team really, and they haven't done anything in quite some time. And so, for the reasons you laid out to win the National League, I thought the Phillies might be worth a look at, 4-1. And if you line shop, I think you might even be able to find them at 5-1 to win the NL East. So your surprise long shot is the Reds at about 65-1, depending on where you're looking. And you had the Phillies as well, right? At 13-1 to win the National League. Just writing it down, buddy. So hopefully I'll keep my notes and we'll get there. So for me, I said I think the Rays are worth considering. I'm not going to play it, But the one I think I'm going to play is the Phillies at plus 400 to win the NL East. But like many people, I'll be rooting for the Jays to have a big year. They've certainly built on paper, right? A very good roster, what appear to be shrewd offseason moves. But again, they're playing in a tough division. And when a team is so hyped, it always scares me. I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong.
I hear you.
All right. Wow. We're chewing through stuff here. We want to talk quickly for me about the Masters. As I was saying off the top, if it's not my favorite sports weekend, it's in the top 3. There's no question. I know you're not a golf guy. Do you watch the Masters though?
Maybe for the last hour on Sunday, if it's really cool and close, or somebody's got a sweat. I mean, I don't play the game. Right. I view it as a game, not a sport. Again, I'm not saying that they're not athletes, but I mean, I don't even play it. So to watch a guy go up to a hole and maybe, I mean, to me, watching them putt is like watching my kid putt in mini golf. I mean, it doesn't do it for me. I'm looking to shrink my sport watchage. I'm not looking to increase it. So pass.
I get that. If you don't play golf, I totally understand how you may have zero interest in watching it. That actually makes a ton of sense to me.
I know Tiger's playing, and I know Tiger.
Okay, well, we don't know that yet.
Sorry. Maybe he's playing. Maybe he's not playing. I don't even know how they don't know whether or not he's playing, but
he's in the field. He's in the field right now, but he has not made any public proclamations that he will in fact play, right? Because he doesn't know if he can walk the course. I mean, in tournament play, he's been there this week. He was there playing at least one practice round with his son. So, and that got a lot of attention, obviously. I did look. If he stays in the field, he was at about 50-1, and I don't think I would never count out Tiger, but I don't really think
Tiger's not winning that tournament 1 in 50 times. People are just betting on him for the sake of betting on Tiger. I mean, Tiger's chances of winning this tournament, I'm guessing, are about 1 in 300 if they put him at 50-1. This is like Conor 100%. McGregor all over again. Like they talk about Tiger every tournament, and
he hasn't played a tour event in well over a year, and he was coming off an injury at that point, right before the car accident and everything else. So it'll be a massive story if he plays. Even at 50-1, there's no value in Tiger, because while you never say never with Tiger Woods, he's not winning the tournament. I'll go on record saying that. Trust me, I'm not going out on a limb by saying so. So the faves, again, going back to what we talked about with futures. Now, this is a much shorter time frame. It's only 4 days, right, to tie your money up. But again, I'm always looking for value. And so I'm always looking past the favorites. And the way I look at most golf tournaments, and in particular the Masters, because I always throw something down before the tournament on a couple guys to win, is the favorites, not much value. And just to recap, Jon Rahm, who was number 1 player in the world, I think he's dropped to 2, is 9-1, plus 900. Then you've got Jordan Spieth, Colin Morikawa, and Justin Thomas at plus 1,200 or 12-1, followed by Rory McIlroy and Dustin Johnson at 14-1. And then the next,
Jorey, where are you getting your prices? Because I'm on Bet365, and the Bet365 prices, which are usually not the best, are all better across the board from you.
Well, this was from last night. This was from last night from Bet365. So you're saying lines have moved that much?
I guess. What are you telling me? That Morikawa
was 12-1 last night.
16-1. He's 16-1, and so is Spieth.
Wow. So that changed overnight. I'm talking last night. I looked at this. I didn't look this morning because I was looking at other lines like Final Four and other things for this morning. So it got even better. But those are still the top choices as of last night. Cam Smith, Brooks Koepka, and Scotty Scheffler were plus 1,600. What are you seeing at the moment? I didn't pull it up on my screen.
Scheffler 16, Koepka's 18. Who else did you say?
Cameron Smith.
16-1. That guy you said was good. Scheffler 16-1.
Right. He's the number 1 player in the world.
Not to be confused with Schauffele. I don't know how to pronounce it. He's 22.
Xander Schauffele. Yes.
Yeah, there's multiple Tigers here at 50-1. Here, let's see guys that I would say are definitely way better than Tiger that are more than 50-1.
So while you look at that, again, I wanted to just kind of recap the favorites. So sure. I sort of go second tier, third tier, and then long shot, right? I'll play 2 or 3 guys from sort of those categories. And when I say second tier to me is like 20-1 to 40, 50-1. Okay. Then longer odds are 50-1 and higher. And then long shots over 100-1, right?
So go for it. And then I'm going to give you a couple picks. I got a couple guys for you.
Okay. So first, let me just say I'm rooting for Rory. Again, as I said, last night he was about 14, 15-1. Rory McIlroy I'm talking about. I'm rooting for Rory. It's the only major he hasn't won. He should have won it a number of years ago, but he choked big time in the final round and shot 80. So I'm rooting for Rory. I'm a Rory fan. I want to see him complete the career Grand Slam. My second tier, my value plays are as follows. Xander Schauffele, who you mentioned, at 22-1. He's due to break through. He's a contender virtually at every major. And I think this could be, his form's been pretty solid, maybe not as good as I would like coming in, but he's a threat at every major, and one of these is going to go his way. 22-1 Xander Schauffele. At longer odds, Canadian content, right? I'm going again with my boy Corey Connors. His form is great, right? Coming off a 3rd place at the World Match Play last week. He had a pretty decent first round, as I recall, yesterday, as he's playing this week where he won his only PGA Tour event at the Valero Open in Texas. He's at around 60-1. He's been in the top 10 in the last 2 Masters, and we've talked about when betting golf, horses for courses. He likes this course. He's going to have to putt better than he normally does because that's the sort of the weakness in his game, although he started to improve. At around 60-1, I got to go Canadian content Corey Connors. And long shot, again, I wish his form was a little bit better, but he's won a major. He's had good results here. I think he was 2nd or 3rd when Tiger won a couple years ago. And that's Francesco Molinari at 100-1. So those are my 3 picks. I don't know if I'll play the 100-1, but I'll probably put a little bit on Schauffele and Corey Connors. You got a pick?
I got 2 picks. I'm going to take both. Where are they? Joaquin Niemann and Shane Lowry. I have no clue who these 2 guys are, but
those are both pretty good picks.
They're both.
They are. Lowry's on good form. Yeah, and Niemann's been one of the better players in the world this year and got his first and got a win.
Here's my golf tip for everybody. They're both 50-1, like Tiger. Instead of wasting instead of wasting money on your Tiger pick, don't bet Tiger. Bet half as much on each of Shane Lowry and Joaquin Niemann because they are definitely, by definition, better value than Tiger since I have no clue who they are. And hopefully one of them catches lightning in a bottle and wins it.
Neither is a bad pick. Lowry's a major winner. He won the Open Championship 2019. Has played very well in the early part of this year. And I think he's got a decent track record at Augusta. And Niemann's been one of the better players this year. He's got a win. And again, playing well coming in. So those are not crazy outlandish picks at 50-1.
Thank you, Jorey. Having said that, to be crystal clear, if I bet $1,000 on each of those guys and I had 50 grand riding on one of them and they were leading the Masters by a stroke going into Sunday afternoon, and there was a mediocre chick flick on TV that I had seen already, I would probably watch that over the 3 to 4 hours of golf.
Go away.
And tune in at maybe hole 17.
Oh, go away. Go away. You're missing the boat here, my friend. Come on, man.
I missed it a long time ago.
The Masters doesn't get any better. There will
No,
be a
it does
lot
get
of
better because our next topic is the amazing Raptors, who keep winning and winning. The Raptors are playing Orlando tonight. They're a 10-point favorite on the road.
ooh.
They're very likely now to avoid the Nets and the play-in game.
They're
now
only two.
50
They're
to
only
1
2 games out of 4th right now for home court in the first round.
They're only 50 to 1 to win the NBA championship. They've jumped the Bulls and the Cavs in the standings. Remember DeRozan's Bulls, and he was an MVP candidate a month ago or two. There's no bet for me on that. I am proud of the Raps, and that's awesome. But there is a Raptors bet my buddy Avi called and tipped me off on that I did like. The Raptors' Scotty Barnes is plus 270 to win Rookie of the Year. He's the second favorite. The big overwhelming favorite is the Cavs center, Evan Mobley.
Yeah.
But he's got an ankle injury. He's out at least 3 more games and maybe more. Barnes looks good. He's the second choice. If the Raps continue winning, Scotty plays awesome. Mobley's out for the season. Plus 270. It didn't seem like a bad play. I want all listeners to feel free to tweet us, email us your potential value bets. I'm always happy to take a look. Nobody knows everything. I think Avi's reaction to the Mobley injury was a very sharp take. As soon as he saw him go down, the ramifications were Scotty for Rookie of the Year. It's a good take, and I like to play.
All right. Now, I will point out about the Raptors. They have really struggled against the lesser lights, right? They keep beating the good teams, right? But they lost back-to-back against the Pistons and the Magic, about 3 weeks ago before they went on this really good run that they've been on?
Yes, they did.
So, plus 10. I think the Raptors should find a way to win the game, but it's a perfect letdown spot, right? Again, coming off another big win at home where they came back from a pretty significant first half deficit and then blew out the T-Wolves, who had also been on a bit of a roll. So I'm not saying I'm playing it. I'm just saying I think it might be worth a look in one of these classic letdown type scenarios. Although there should be no letdown because they should be looking to sew up as high a seed as they possibly can, because right now they're a team nobody really wants to see in the NBA playoffs. I can tell you that.
I agree. The teams would definitely rather face the Cavs or the Bulls, especially post Cavs injuries, etc. Having said that, teams will lose on purpose to play the Raptors if the alternate is having to play Brooklyn. So
yes,
I mean,
there's something to be said for that.
The NBA made it more interesting with all this seeding, but because so many teams are tanking now, you get these weird dynamics where winning and playing certain teams is not great. So we'll see how it plays out.
Before we make our way out the door for another edition of the program, our gambling story of the week is a simple one. April 4th is Monday, if you didn't know. And in Ontario, I'm sure you're fairly well aware, especially if you've been watching sports, because the marketing has begun in earnest. There's lots of it. Encourage you to download their apps, right? Because as of Monday, it's only been the Provincial Lottery Corp that's been allowed to offer single game wagering, and that's going to change. And you're going to see a lot of books operational right from the get-go on Monday. The Parleh's hosting kind of a launch event, if you will, down at the Rec Room on Bremner Boulevard, which is right down near the Dome, right near Rogers Center. And you can check out the Parleh on all social media for details. We'll be there. Apparently, we're going to talk to the folks probably about the championship game on Monday night on the men's side and some other things. But
phenomenal opportunity for people if you sign up for a bunch of accounts at a bunch of different books and bonus it up. Maybe we can give you a good value play and you can jumpstart your legal betting career in Ontario.
So I have one question. We talked earlier about it. You pointed out, people, please play responsibly. We can't stress that enough. If you've been a casual sports bettor for years, just because it's legal here, don't change your ways just for that reason, right? Manage your bankroll, decide how much you want to play on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, stick to it. And as Harley told you earlier, if you're going to increase the amount, not necessarily the amount or the volume that you bet, track your results. And I think that's excellent advice. So my one question for you, though, is with bonuses, and you're going to get a lot of free bets and things of that nature, what is your philosophy on using bonus money and or free bets? And I'll preface it by saying a lot of the time what I like to do when I get free bets is I like to put it on longer shots. When they're giving me free money, I like to take shots as opposed to just betting a straight, point spread bet where I'm going to, make even money or, less juice, so to speak. But I like the free bets. I like to play little longer shots and try and cash it because they're giving me free money. How do you feel about it?
So there's two approaches you can take. The sharpest guys online that'll analyze the bonuses will tell you to do the exact opposite of what you just suggested.
I know.
And actually lay 10-1 on like Man City to beat, I don't even know who's getting relegated in the English Premier League. I haven't bet that much soccer this year.
It won't be Man City, but yes.
Right.
But get
bet
the point.
Man City to crush some Portsmouth, whatever these teams are.
Right. Massive favorite. Massive favorite.
Because the theory is that they're giving you money and getting your principal back plus their principal is the primary goal. So they're right if you really want to grind it out. The other approach you can take, which is similar to what you suggested, that I would suggest is a great strategy for a lot of newbie bettors, is if there's match plays, open up 10 accounts at 10 different sports betting sites and say there's a $25 match. You fund each of your 10 sites with $25. They match it to $50. So total, you're in for $250. Bet something wild, like you suggested, futures, a big underdog at like 8-1, 10-1, whatever the price is. Just win one of them at one of your accounts, have $400 at DraftKings or Bet Rivers or Cool Bet or Points or whoever it is. And there you go. You turn your $250 total into like $400 or $500. And all of a sudden, you're now a points bet better because kind of that's where the luck and the fortune was.
Right.
And it's a better story than most. How did you end up at points bet? Oh, I listened to Harley's tip and I took, who did I take? Neiman, Lowry, whoever the hell it was to win the golf. And he won it. And I turned my bonus into big money. And now I'm a better there. So I think from that perspective, that's a clean strategy because you, for relatively little dollars, can start funding an account pretty good and you can bet from there.
And so just one other thing. So the example that you gave, like, let's say if you deposit $25, they'll match it, right? So you end up with 50. Do you start by playing the free money, just the 25 or portions thereof before you get into your own 25 and try and increase it, cash out? Like how do you do it when you're getting a match? When you have to deposit money and it gets matched.
It totally depends on the terms of the conditions of the match. Some places just let you match and bet once and you could do whatever you want, in which case you could do whatever you want. Some of them force the money to be recycled multiple times. Like you got to bet 150 worth of bets, in which case you got to start betting $10 and $20 a game. And in 3 months, you'll have accumulated your bonus. So you really got to read the terms and conditions. Next Friday on the show, 100%, we could talk about some of the pros and cons and good bonuses and bad and rollouts. And I'll save you the suspense. Some of the sites are going to suck. Some of the sites are going to have glitches. We're going to talk about, unfortunately, a lot of the negatives of, I won this bet, it didn't go through, and this thing happened and that thing happened. And I'm sure we'll have listeners and viewers and watchers and colleagues and friends at the parlay that are going to be like, what's with this app and what's with that one? And there'll be some good stories of, oh, this was fun and this was great and I never realized how smooth it was. And we'll go from there.
We will be keeping a close watch on what happens when Ontario opens up to other operators starting this Monday, April 4th, and again Monday night at the Rec Room on Bremner Boulevard down near Rogers Centre in Toronto. Come say hi. We'll be there. We'll be talking to the masses during part of the program. We won't be the only ones, though, that will be talking to everyone. And so looking forward to talking more Masters next week as well, Harley. I know you can't wait, but
Excited.
I don't give a shit. I'll be talking about Masters next week. And one last thing out the door, tennis. Just the final in Miami, which goes tomorrow, Saturday. Naomi Osaka, again, the former number one, against now the current or about to be number one, Iga Swiatek. Osaka's a plus 137. Does that number sound familiar, Harley? Plus 137. That was my Kyrgios bet last week.
Okay.
Swiatek's on a 16-match winning streak. She is rolling right now and is deservedly the number one player in the world when the rankings come out on Monday. But I think there's value in Osaka, who has turned the corner of late and is playing her best tennis in over a year.
She's up to plus 162.
Whoa. And that was this morning. I looked at that like an hour and a half ago, maybe not even.
Yeah. Lines move. I don't know.
I'll take it even better. Plus 162. I think there's value on Osaka. So remember that for next week. And so, again, email us your questions at theparleh.com. Your questions, your comments, your picks, your pans, all of that. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Jorey Middle or at Sharp Edge Picks. And you can follow us and the Parleh on Twitter and other social media as well. And so, as we say each and every week on the way out, for Harley, I'm Jorey. May all your picks be winners, ours too. We'll talk to you next week on another edition of the Parleh Sports Betting Show on Canada's Sports Betting Network, the Parleh. Good luck and enjoy, Harley.
Have a good weekend, Jorey.
Thanks.